Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our soulful mornings. Let's start our beautiful morning by bowing in gratitude to divine beings, to infinite beings, to light beings, and requesting them to shelter us, protect us, guide us, mentor us, nudge us in our inward journey, to guide us in a way that we can reach to our maximum potential by doing whatever practices that we are guided to do. Let's bow in gratitude, wait for some download, and just request. And meanwhile, let's practice lotus of gratitude to start our beautiful mornings by taking 100 seconds to go inwards. Life has given us so much, and yet we find it's insufficient. We complain, we find things to complain, not knowingly, but unknowingly. We want to accept the people the way they are, and yet there's expectation. And when that expectation is not fulfilled, we get antsy, we get angry. And when we get antsy and angry, our energy again changes into one of giving discomfort to another soul, of complaining, of cribbing, of not accepting. Why can't he do it this way? Why can't she do it this way? Why can't they change? Forgetting that we have been given only one person to change, and that is us. When we change, the world changes. We forget this. So how do we constantly remind ourselves into being in an acceptance mode and not a denial mode or not expecting mode? So what we can do for this is, whenever we say something to someone which we know has gone from acceptance to expecting or anger or frustration or any kind of emotion, we just pinch our left hand center. Pinch or like press it hard 5 times. You can practice it now. And request our body, request our light beings, every time I go off center, let this area palpitate and let me get aware. And request your fingers to just automatically go in and pinch. And this will help us every time to be in contact with ourselves, with our higher selves. And when we start being in touch on an everyday level with the higher self, next step that will happen is we will speak very consciously. We are all here on the soul journey to increase our consciousness, to decrease our anxiety, to decrease our frustration, to decrease our expectation, to increase our acceptance, to increase our good vibration, to increase our gratitude. We are here working on ourselves on every single day basis, waking up in gratitude, sleeping in gratitude, meditating, healing others, becoming the channel of healing others, creating affirmative mind setup, expanding our hearts, expanding our consciousness by learning, reading about souls. I know all of us have known in this beautiful long journey of our soul connection that we've all been here for so many lives. And in this life journey of ours, so much is happening, continuously happening. We're almost touching our 90 days. By now, it's ingrained in us that we all have had multiple lives. And that only one thing is there in every life to be learned, that lesson. What is the lesson we have learned in this life up until now in a conscious way? So let's reflect on the life that we have lived. And most importantly, let's reflect on the challenges that have come again and again and again. Which pattern has repeated itself? Now, this pattern could be health, personal health, or personal challenges with relationships with people. That people tend to misunderstand us or something, something, something. Think about it. And when you see a pattern, ask your higher self. Ask your mentors, your teachers, your light beings, your infinite beings who are around you in energy. May not be in physical body, in energy. That I've had this course correction again and again, but I've not corrected myself. I can see the pattern and I understand that they're coming again and again to teach me a lesson, but I still haven't been able to intertwine that, integrate that lesson in my this being. Show me the light. All of us are human beings having a spiritual experience. So it's very obvious that we all are going to go through challenges. We all are going to go through expectations. But how to bring down the level of expectations, how to bring down the level of challenges is on us. The choice is always ours. When we will start operating from a world of love, everything will start fitting in. Like the bright puzzle pieces will start coming together and we'll be able to see the bigger picture. But if we get stuck in finding that one piece of puzzle in between thousands, it's going to be a futile exercise. One that will take us repetition of the same, picking up one puzzle piece, leaving it, picking up another, leaving it, picking up another, leaving it, because they're not the right fit. So rather than that, what if we start finding that light, that one thing, by going inwards? And that one thing will be counting our blessings and asking. Far too often we forget to ask, despite knowing that the Bible says and every other Granth says, ask and you shall be given. मांगो तो मिलेगा. So much so we've been taught that even a child has to cry out in hunger to be fed, mostly. And yet we forget to ask. Because at times we become egoistic and we say, जो भगवान ने दिया बहुत है. भगवान की पूरी हमारे पर श्रद्धा है. Yeah, that's great. That's being grateful. Fabulous. We should do that. But when Bhagwan is like a father who's always ever providing, and when you as a human want to become a shade better in your finances, in your relationships, in your love quotient, in every aspect of your life, why don't you ask for it? Why do you keep waiting in the line like 95% of the people? 95, why 99% of people come, take birth, live their human life, go. How come just 1%, less than 1%, are in the ascension process, are realizing that we are here and we cannot waste this beautiful life? And that we need to go inward. We need to create ourselves. We need to work on ourselves. And if we are work in progress, yet why is there no accountability at all? Why is there no destination at all? Why haven't we decided which path to take? If it's a general path, we need to identify the finer lines in that. Identify our genre. And walk towards that with clarity, with mentoring, with nudging, with prodding, with accountability. And that in itself, we fail. Just the way body requires breathing to live and then food to live, the mind requires meditation. And the body becomes addicted to food, it starts binging, or alcohol, it starts becoming alcoholic, or drugs, it starts becoming addictive. So creating the right balance in the body is important with the help of supplements, maybe. Similarly, when mind becomes addicted to binge watching anything on TV, or addicted to say news, or addicted to gossip, or complaining, then we need to do sadhana, meditation. What is sadhana? मन को साध के रखना is sadhana. So it's very important that we learn the benefits of pranayama and other meditative techniques. And we pick up one technique minimum which helps us. And the technique could be guided meditation, just the way we're doing now, being aware of our breath and yet listening to something. So we're not just listening, we are practicing conscious breathing, conscious living by increasing our levels of consciousness. Meditation is anything which keeps your mind ekagra and in a flow state, actually. So if we are dancing, if we are walking and we are in a flow state, we are meditating. If we are painting or if we're designing something and we don't get to know about time, then we're in a flow state, then we're meditating. So find your meditative state. It doesn't have to be closing our eyes, sitting with the back straight always and listening or doing something, no. So let's meditate to become the better version of ourselves every day and create a tracker wherein we write, this is what today I did for my meditation. Did I give myself 1 hour or not? This 1 hour could be broken into 20 minutes or 3 slots. Doesn't matter. Simply start. When you start enjoying what you do, you will want to do it for longer automatically. Don't force yourselves. That will be against your mind. Simply start. Then gratitude writing will also be in a flow state. You won't have to think much. You'll pick up the pen, you'll just write down very easily. 10 gratitudes in one page in 7 minutes flat, 5 minutes flat, done. Now come back to your being by rubbing your hands. Again, bowing in gratitude. And then thanking our masters, angel guardians, guides, and starting a beautiful journey into the wonderful book reading by Dr. Brian Weiss. In Same Soul, Many Bodies. So I know the screen is still sharing, it's loading, it's been happening since yesterday. Just listen to my voice until the screen starts showing. Use this chapter number 10. I do not know why it's taking so long. Let me once again stop it and then restart it. Maybe it'll do it this time. Today, again, we are going to be reading one beautiful chapter. The chapter is number 10. The story is about John, and we're going to be talking about free will and destiny. It's again loading. So when it'll load, it'll be fine. Otherwise, be with my voice. Without wasting much time, let's start about the session. I talked about free will and destiny earlier, and it forms a major theme in my previous book, Only Love is Real. Yet, it is a lesson that cannot be stressed enough, for it comes up frequently in our lives. Every day I hear about it from patients, from colleagues doing different similar work. Destiny and free will seem to exist together. There is an intelligence, a wisdom, a consciousness that knows how events and relationships will turn out. Hamlet calls it a destiny that shapes our ends. We on earth don't know how they will end, but we can affect how they will turn out for us, both later in our life and in our lives to come by our present actions and behaviors by our free will. Just as a soul does a review at the end of a life, so it seems to make a life preview before we are born. It plans the life. I'm going to work on compassion or empathy or nonviolence, for example. It sees how the life is set up, whom we are going to meet, who will help us along the spiritual path, how we're going to help them. It's complicated because there's an interaction with other souls and they have their own plans too. The people we meet and the experiences that are set up help us learn that's destiny. Okay, you met this beautiful person. You've had in your life preview plan to spend the rest of your lives together, learning together, helping each other as you progress towards immortality. But the person is of the wrong religion or lives far too away, or your parents intervene, or you don't have the courage to override the influence of your culture, so you choose not to marry that person, either spiritually or physically. Okay, I'm again going to close the screen sharing and hope that this time again, because it's been showing continuously sharing, and I know when we're used to reading the book, we want the screen in front of us. It's again sharing, screen loading. So I'm sorry in case it doesn't load today. Do not know the reasons. So now, we were talking about this person that we don't, we like him and he and I have decided to make the life, but he's from a different country, different religion or whatever, different thing. And your parents intervene, they decide not to marry this person, either spiritually or physically. This is free will. You had a choice, freely made. It was a no. The choice will bring you to a destiny point that might not have occurred if your choice had been yes. This is how we change our future in this life. Yes, screen is finally there. If you meet this person and marry, it will put you on one road that you choose from your free will. It will affect the rest of this life and your future lives. If you choose to separate, you will be on a different road and you may be learning different lessons. You may meet a different person, a different soulmate, or have a different experience. You will work primarily on empathy, say, rather than non-violence. The more important question are how quickly you are going to learn and how much happiness, spirituality, tranquility, and so forth you're going to have in your life. The answers depend on a large extent on your free will. It's like climbing a tree. There are many different branches and many different choices. You'll come to the top of the tree eventually, but it may take 5 lifetimes or 10 or 30. How many lifetimes will it take to fulfill your soul's goal of learning compassion, for example? It'll depend on the choices you make. Thus, both destiny, the tree, and after all was there, and free will coexist. I don't believe in physics psychics who say you're going to meet this wonderful person in 2008 and you will get married. They may be skillful and talented psychics, but they may be right that you'll meet your partner in 2008, but it's a free choice that will determine whether or not you spend your lives together. You'll choose based on your own intuition, not on the psychic. Sometimes people get swayed by the psychics and they even say this, astrologers, and people say that, oh, this must be the one. But it's all about free will. Here's an example of a free choice made in the present that will change a man's future lives. It wasn't come by easily. Choices he made in earlier lives affected this one. And if he hadn't been able to regress and to understand the regression, I'm not sure how long it would have taken him to find the right path. His name was John, and he died in what might have been the Great Fire of London. The Great Fire of London. He wasn't sure of the date, not only that it was a fire, it was in the Middle Ages, the city was London, and he died. The event traumatized him in the different lifetimes to come. I didn't know about it immediately. As with all my patients, we spent the first session discussing his present problems, trying to see if there was a root cause for them in his childhood or in other aspects of this current life. Then there were several regressions leading to dim and inconclusive images, and one that led to a vivid past but not to the fire. The first thing I should know about him is that almost as soon as we shook hands, that he was rich. Usually people tell you the age where they live, their marital status, a little about their family history, or what they do for a living. Not John. I'm a wealthy man, he said, and then kept quiet as though this was all the information I needed. I was tempted to say, well, good for you. Wealth doesn't impress men. To boast about it seems not only bad manners, but bad taste. But I realized quickly that he wasn't boasting, for the statement was delivered without joy or pride. It was as though wealth was a problem he had come to see me about. We would get to that. First, I wanted to study what he looked like and then take a conventional history. Actually, John's appearance announced his wealth almost as directly as he did himself. He was in his late 60s and had the kind of mannequin looks that come with facelifts, custom made shirts, frequent Caribbean vacations, or a good sun lamp, teeth whiteners, personal trainer, loyal 2000 haircuts, and a weekly manicure. I had the feeling that if someone struck him gently with a hammer, he would crumble like a new jerry built facade on a rotting house. It wouldn't have surprised me if he had been, or still was, a professional model, though that did not seem like a likely profession for him. Indeed, as it turned out, he had no profession at all. He lived in a Palm Beach mansion with 20 rooms, servants, and a 4-car garage. His wife Lauren was someone whose picture my wife Carol had not only seen in the society pages of Miami Herald, but also in articles about Florida society in Vogue and Vanity Fair. They were another house in Barbados, a flat in London, and a Peter Terra in New York. There were also 2 children, Stacy 19 in a sophomore year at Wellesley, majoring in boys, John said, and Ralph 25, finishing law school and hoping to clerk for a Supreme Court justice. John was not optimistic about the boys' chances. What about you? I asked. Are your parents alive? Died 8 and 10 years back. You had a good relationship with them? I suppose so. They were very social when I was a kid. I was brought up by nannies. My mom and dad took me on trips often with them. From the time I was 12, they sometimes let me have dinner with them when they had invited guests. When it was just the three of us, we ate together, of course, but that didn't happen often.
Who were the guests likely to be? Their friends, naturally, mainly the neighbors. When they came to dinner, I'd be there too. They liked to play bridge after dinner, but by then I'd be in bed. They were business guests. My presence at such dinners was strictly verboten. Dad was what it was called an international financier, some whatever that means. All sorts of illustrious bankers showed up, along with an occasional deposited dictator of some South American country. From time to time, a European muck. Margaret Thatcher slept over once, quite a to-do, Albert, but not so good for a little boy. Not good at all, said John. I always felt I was less important to my father than my business associates, and your mother less important than my father. This was said as a kind of joke, but I could feel the pain beneath it. His mother had centered her attention on his father, not on him. Any siblings, I'm an only child. They didn't have time to neglect more than me, more than one. What about childhood friends? Dozens of acquaintances, no close friends. My parents would throw huge birthday parties for me, and it seemed every child in Florida showed up. But I quickly realized that they were there for the food, the favors, and the pony rides, not because I was close in their hearts. Even my school chums were only that chums. They were all nannied too, closely supervised, so we didn't have a chance to get into mischief. Even now, I get jealous when I hear about the street gangs or reformatories. It seems to me that those boys had it better than I did. His small ironies covered large wounds, I thought. It's hard to be an adjunct to one's parents' lives. I knew from notes my assistant jotted down when John first called for an appointment that he had never sought psychotherapy before, even though his unhappiness was long lasting. And I wondered what specific incident had impelled him to come to me. So you grew up overly cloistered, I asked. Perfectly put. I was like a tapestry on the walls, beautiful, finely crafted, but nothing more than adornment. He thought for a moment. Still, I believe they love me in their own way. What about college? Surely you could escape then. All the way to the University of Southern California, and your life changed. For the 3 months I was there, yes, you were expelled. I quit. Why? Because the work was too hard. You hated to study. I couldn't study. There was no point in it. It was too hard to pick up a book or a test tube. Isn't one point to get a degree? I suppose so. I didn't need one to not work, which even at 18 you had mapped out as your future course. No, consciously, no. Subconsciously, yes. What about learning for the joy of it, for the intellectual excitement? When I learn something, I feel no joy or excitement. I was becoming exasperated. Nothing interests you. Many things do, but never as long as for a month. After I quit college, I tried a whole series of jobs: real estate, banking, Porsche salesman, sporting goods. None of them came to anything. How did your parents feel about this? I'm not sure they knew. They certainly didn't care. You see, by the time I was 21, my trust fund kicked in. 1 million per year, enough for me to scrape by. I rented a house in Malibu and devoted myself to my one abiding interest, my since I was 15 obsession, which is girls, women, the female form, the female flesh. As I say from age 15, an obsession. So you had affairs and romances, absolutely, and one night stands, fleeting dalliances, you name it. I never paid for sex, at least in the sense of hiring prostitutes or call girls. But my girls were expensive nevertheless. The finest dinners, a bauble, a jijo for the fabulous ones. How many were there? Hundreds. And how long did the serious affairs last? How many were there? Hundreds. How long do serious affairs last? My usual concentration span, less than a month. But your wife? Laureen. Oh, she was, of course, one of the fabulous ones, or else I wouldn't have married her. You've been married how long? 26 years. Sounds as if you've exceeded your concentration span by quite a lot. Not really. We've been married for a long time, but both of us lost interest quickly. With us, it's more of a business arrangement. To Leo? Never. What do you take me for? No, Laurie said my business is being rich. With our combined resources, we can buy anything we want, anything. Give me an example. Well, Madagascar. You bought Madagascar? Not really. Actually, our money goes forward in good towards good work. My parents funded a foundation for charitable work. It's established a startup home tutoring programs for inner city 4 and 5 year olds from troubled families. Set up AIDS clinic. It have 17 different locations with more to come, sort of thing. And I, Lorraine, and I contribute heavily to it. The interest on the interest. But you don't take an active part in managing it. I could manage a lemonade stand. Well, working for it then, looking for new projects, too much work, too much trouble. Does Lauren feel the same way? She has her own public relation firm. It occupies her full time, though God knows she doesn't need the income. I decided to provoke him. His airy dismissal of any ambition, any goal seemed a symptom of an unquiet soul. While you stay home, doing whatever pleases you, working out, taking the occasional nap, if at all it gets too tough, right in all but one respect, the occasional nap. Sorry. Then 10 hours of sleep each night is enough. The veneer cracked, his body sagged, his eyes looked haunted. Lately, I haven't been able to sleep, never on my own, and there isn't a drug's powerful enough to keep me under for more than an hour or two. Yet, you lead an ideal life, plenty of money, good looks, your pick of women, understanding wife, gorgeous home. Yes, you might have had neglectful parents, but they provided for you, and you tell me that they loved you. What force is so powerful that doesn't let you sleep? He struggled to keep his voice calm and feel terror, Dr. Wise, unremitting, abject terror. I felt the hair rise on my arms. Terror or what? Death. I run and run and run from the fear, but it always catches up. The women, they are just a diversion. So was any job I ever took. Nothing drove me from the fear. It's hard to go outdoors. It was hard to come here because I'm sure I'll be in an accident. I won't drive, can't drive. A house has more alarm systems than a mafia dons. We rarely travel. Planes are death traps. A sudden loud noise, I'm under the table. I'm a Vietnam vet with PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. Only I'm never been to war. The idea of my handling a gun is ludicrous. Jesus, I'm scared to carve a turkey. Last year I heard a car backfire and fainted. I passed out. I decided it was crazy and I'd better do something about it, so I called you. He sat back, pale, shaken. I often find it difficult to figure out whether the cause of a patient's symptoms lie in the present life or some past life. Here, given John's present life history, they seemed so, oh, no question, only something that had happened in a past life or a series of past lives could explain his trauma. I discussed the issue with him. I'm game. Nothing could be worse than what I'm already experiencing. Our first attempts were inconclusive. It was as though John was reluctant to investigate the past. Eventually, he reached a significant period and it galvanized him. It's many centuries ago, John said, his eyes closed but his body tense. I'm a great warrior, a warrior king. The army I lead is passed outside a fortified city, its walls unbreachable because many of my men have grown sick from dysentery, and too few of them are well enough to mount an attack. Nevertheless, if we don't take the city, our weakness will become known and we'll be slaughtered in the field. I've arranged a meeting with the ruler of the city, but before it takes place, I have my own men pitch their tents and put on the armor to disguise the extent of our plight. What he sees before him, what when he looks at us from the battlesman, I tell the ruler, is just a small portion of my army, not 5 miles away, is a force of 3,000 men, only awaiting my signal before the attack. They have been without women for several months. The rape of his people's wives and daughters is only one of the consequences. He can be sure if the city fails. The men will be killed and the babies roasted on splits. My men have committed such atrocities in other battles, and words of them they reach the ruler, so he believes what I say. What will you have me do? He asks. Give up peacefully. Let us occupy your city only for the time it will take us to rest and care for our horses. Then we will leave. There are more important battles to be won elsewhere. The ruler agrees.
He opened the gate to the city. Immediately, my men attacked. They killed all the able bodied men. They ravished the women, and I raped the ruler's daughter, for I, too, have been too long without a woman's comfort. When we have finished, we set fire to the city, bolting the gates closed behind us. As we depart, the fire spreads to nearby woods, but my men are unharmed. All those within the city are burned to death. My name becomes synonymous with cruelty and destruction. I am feared throughout the region. Great rulers give me untold riches to prevent my attacks. I can buy anything I want, have anything I want, including Madagascar. I asked. When he discussed his feeling of wealth and power. He saw the connection between that past life and his present one, but my little joke didn't amuse him. He was staggered by the extent of his cruelty, horrified that in whatever life, in whatever persona, he was capable of rape and murder. I suspect you've paid for it, I said, in another life. Precisely. In that life, you remained unscathed. You must have been afraid somebody would take revenge on you, but nobody did. The fear that you felt when you looked over your shoulder isn't commensurate with the terror you experience today. He took a deep breath and exhaled with a sigh. Then let's go back again. It was to the time of the Great Fire. John was a real wealthy merchant who neglected his wife and the two children in favor of countless affairs. His wife had left him, preferring to go penniless rather than stay with him, and she had taken the children with her. One of them, their 6-year-old daughter, Alice, was visiting him begging for money when the fire broke out. He had fallen into a drunken sleep on his bed. His frantic daughter had been unable to rouse him when she first smelled the flames. It wouldn't have done either of them any good if she had. The fire was all consuming, eating the wooden house of London, everything else, alive or inanimate, they contained, and maintaining the cobblestone so hot that escape was impossible. My first sensation was that I couldn't breathe, John said, gasping even as he relived it. The smoke was so thick it was impossible to see. I could hear Alice screaming at her as her hair caught fire, but the screams soon stopped. I suppose that mercifully she had died. Death came for me too, but it took its time. The flames seemed to crawl their way up my body rather than taking the whole. The legs burned first and my torso, and only after a long time my head. It was as though I was being crucified for sins like drunkenness and adultery, bad sins, I admit, but I didn't seem to deserve such a cruel sentence of death. In his life review, John realized that he'd committed sins requiring the harshest punishment, only they were from his earliest life. He understood too why his fear was so great. There could be nothing worse than the agony he experienced in London, even though it might have been unbearable. Rather than traumatizing him further, the visions of his cruelty and subsequent punishment by fire ignited in him impulses of compassion and charity. He took a far greater interest in his parents' foundation, at last channeling his great wealth into projects he oversaw himself. Fittingly, one was the funding of auxiliary fire departments. He stopped womanizing, tried to heal the rift with Lorraine, unfinished work that continues as I write this, and took courses in economics and management, expecting one day to take over the running of the foundation. He could sleep now. With it came an energy that surprised him more than it did me. Compassion is energizing. I continued to see him for many months, not to regrets, but to discussing a lingering depression. He told me that no matter how much he devoted himself to acts of goodness, he couldn't do enough. I was able to assure him that he was on the right path and there would be other lifetimes when he would put that and he learned more fully into practice. Near the end of John's therapy sessions, he agreed to have me progress him in the end and in the near and distant future. Because of the benefits of his earlier regressions, he welcomed the idea of going forward. He had become an excellent hypnotic subject and experienced vivid past life scenes. Perhaps he could do the same in the future. Before John arrived for his progression, I thought about the power of destiny and free will. In the distant past, destiny had made him a leader of men. His sway over allies and enemies alike was enormous. Yet he had chosen to use his power and wealth for aggrandizement, for the subjugation of others, for the benefit of the law, rather than the many. That decision had cost him in the lives that followed, both in London and in 21st century Florida. If he had chosen another path, used his position for the benefit of his community, and displayed compassion and love, then he would have had a different series of lives and would never have had to show up at my office miserable and afraid. Our free will sometimes leads us to evil, not good, to selfishness and not selflessness, to insularity, not compassion, to hate, not love. We must learn that free will is dangerous if incorrectly used. Very important to be noted down, to be underlined, to be highlighted. John's ability to go deeper under hypnosis convinced me that his reports of his journeys into the future would be accurate, made up of what he had actually experienced rather than what he fantasized or wanted the future to be. He had the ability to put aside his cognitive mind, his intellect, in order to experience the future directly without distortion. Once again, reaching a deep trance level, John moved ahead in time while maintaining an out of body awareness. He was quickly approached by two wise spiritual beings who led him to a fork in the road that indicated the way to future lifetimes. He telepathically heard from the wise men that one of the divergent paths, the one on the left, was the route he would have taken if he had not chosen compassion, charity, generosity in his current lifetime. The one on the right was his reward for choosing wisely. I led him down the path on the left so he would see what he had avoided through his current actions. I am on a footbridge, surrounded by fog, but when I reach the other side, I can see clearly. I'm a woman named Diana, an American. It's maybe 100 years or maybe 200 years from now, no more than that. And I'm carrying my baby girl home from a laboratory. I'm unhappily married to a hovercraft pilot who has long since stopped loving me and takes sexual satisfaction from other women. The baby is not his. I've never been pregnant. The baby is a result of an advanced cloning procedure. She'll literally be a little me, though I hope her life turns out more happily than mine. Cloning was perfected because human fertility and birth rates have declined precipitously due to the chemical toxins in the food, water, and air. Most people chose the lab method, and I'm glad I did. At least it's not my husband's child. I haven't traveled much, but my husband has. He's been all over the world in his hovercraft, which can go faster than the speed of sound. When he was still speaking to me, he reported his farms and forests have disappeared. Technology accidents have made many areas uninhabitable, and the people live in huge city states that are so often at war with each other, further polluting the globe. Life, as Diana described, it was not so different from now. People still had suffered from the same problem and maladies. Science and technology had advanced as often for ill as for good. But human ambition, prejudices had not changed. The world was a more dangerous place. Synthetic foods had helped allay hunger, but pollution threatened fish and water supply. I brought her ahead in her life and she began to cry. I thought my daughter would be a joy to me, but she turned out to be as cold and cruel as my husband. I lived to be more than 100 years old, yet each day was a burden, a time of sadness. Death was a relief. I was as alone when I died as I was throughout my life. I led John back to the fork in the road, still in a deep state. He immediately understood that he had learned how his London wife felt when he, the wealthy merchant, had neglected her. It was exactly what he felt when he became Diana and her husband deserted her. John knew, however, that Diana was a figure in her life, and he would not follow. He had chosen the road on the right, and I led him along it now. I'm the president of a prestigious university in what had been America before all national boundaries disappeared. I'm immensely rich, but I live simply with my wife and three children in a house on the campus. I use my money for scholarships, attracting the most talented people in the arts and sources to the sciences to the university. I love working with them, the young minds and full of fresh and innovative ideas. Together, they and I, and the fine faculty that teaches them, looks for ways to create unity amongst the people of the earth by encouraging an emphasis on the similarities and not the differences between them. I'm a renowned man, but that means nothing compared to the joy I get from life. John's visit to his future was short. He would barely enjoy it enough when it was time for him to go there. I instructed him to go beyond these two paths to a more distant future. He grinned happily, still in his deep state. Which place do you want me to go? He asked. I can transport myself anywhere I wish. People don't need bodies anymore, though they can have them if they feel like it. It's fun for sports, say, and surely for sex. But we can go anywhere and be anyone by using visualization and thought. We communicate through consciousness and also through light auras. His own pleasure delighted me. From the way you describe it, it must be very, very distant future. I said, many thousands of years from now? No, not so distant as you think. Though I can't tell you the year, the earth is very lush and green. Again, was mirrored many of the other reports I was hearing. I can't see many people, but this may be because most don't wish to have bodies. They're happy being consciousness and light. The world is a transcendently peaceful place with no hint of war, violence, misery, or grief. I've never been able to scan the planet for negative emotions. None exist. I've been able to scan the planet for negative emotions. None exist. There's no evidence of anger, no hatred or fear, just peace. He could have stayed for hours in the future, but he was experiencing in my office. But by my watch, it was morning at the beginning of the 21st century, and there's another patient in my waiting room, so I had to bring him back. When he came for his next session, he told me that he didn't want to return to the far future. It was too beautiful. He said, I have to live in the present, and now that's beautiful enough. John knew he had learned valuable lessons over his lifetimes, and there were many still to be learned. He realized that his choices he had recently made would profoundly affect his futures, and that in those futures he would have to make different, equally important choices to reach for the glories he had visualized in his travels far ahead. But my choices alone would produce that future, he said. It's a collective decisions of all humans that will get us there, perhaps so. And perhaps that time is, as John has seen, not so distant as you would think. And that in itself is a beautiful promise. Lovely. So, just for your information, we have 4 more days before this beautiful book ends. And after that, we are going to be going into yet another book. And it's going to be glorious 90 days also when we finish this particular book. So, without further ado, let's just close our eyes, express our innate gratitude to the light beings for the vision that we had of the magical future ahead, where people communicate on consciousness, where people communicate with aura lights, where many don't even have bodies because they decide to be only consciousness. And the world is in harmony, a beautiful place to live, to thrive, to grow, to learn. And Mother Earth has regained her glory. Now let's all manifest for such a beautiful world in our future, because we were told very clearly consciousness matters and elevates you to a higher plane. So may we all at humanity level become super conscious and experience ascension, happiness, liberation. And may we let go of all the emotional baggages that continue to control us. Life is magical. Each one of us is magical beyond anything. We are just there to learn, to grow, to evolve. So may we continue to bask in the attention of our loved beings. May we continue to lavish attention on our loved beings, making them bask in our love's attention. May we all spread the magic of love, magic of light, beyond boundaries. Unconditional love, unconditional light. May we keep growing every single day to the next level. May there be love, may there be light. May we shine bright, right here, right now. And with this, we'll express gratitude, heartfelt gratitude to all the light being masters, angels who've come descended on us help to read this wonderful book, visualize a magical future, experience being part of it, and increase our consciousness to further be enveloped in that eternal truth. The free will is always ours, choice is always ours. What we choose today, what we sow today, will reap tomorrow. So, may our today's choices make us very happy indeed in the near future. With love, joy, and happiness, let's sign off this beautiful day with a promise to meeting each other tomorrow morning, same time, same place. I'm going to see you on the 6th December at 6 a.m. in the morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a very blessed and a terrific Tuesday. Thank you. Thank you so much.